Hi juniors, welcome to your cinematography lesson. So if you remember, we got a little bit of this when we did our seminar 1, but we're really going to go in depth into this topic during this release. So what is cinematography? So cinematography is the art of making motion pictures. So this job is done by a cinematographer, and they are responsible for all of the visual elements of a film. This means that they get creative choices when it comes down to the composition, the lighting, the camera movement. Anything that the audience can see in a given shot really comes from your cinematography. And we are talking about things like color to depth of field to how much of the shot is in focus versus how much is blurry, from zoom to the position of people and objects. They are really responsible for all of this. So these three elements, composition, lighting, and camera motion, are important to keep in mind because the photography of the film is the most appealing to the eye of the audience. So we want to make sure that we are producing films that are visually appealing and also telling a good storyline. So let's talk about these three things more in depth. So composition talks about things like the frame, how the element of the scene looks, and when we're thinking about composition, guidelines must be observed when telling stories visually as filmmaking. So within composition, right, just like we talked about, we're talking about the rule of thirds. So photos are divided into thirds with two imaginary lines vertically and two lines horizontally, which makes 3 columns, 3 rows, and now it's 9 sections. Now it's important to think about that we are placing things within 2 of those intersecting points. Now we also have to think about the depth of field, and that includes the distance between the nearest and farthest object in a scene. So we are thinking about really how much is there, how much can we see. Now we also have to think about things like over the shoulder shots. So when we are seeing conversations, when we are having dialogues, you kind of form like a small little square where you can see part of the person's talking shoulder, and then you're looking at the other person in front of them. But in all of this, you have to keep in mind the 180 rule. So the 180 rule states that whatever action is happening, it is happening from one side, and you are looking at it from the action and you are not going to change it, essentially. And then within this, you're also thinking about rack focus, which is focusing on one subject to another on a different plane. So it's kind of like moving away from one to another. Now in here, you can see some of those. So again, our rule of thirds, we're really looking at placing things within those two intersecting points. Our depth of field, kind of looking at how far out it is looking into the background. Over the shoulder is when we have two people within the camera placed just behind the shoulder of one character and is facing the opposite character. Really good for dialogue. And then we have the 180 rule, which is two assumptions essentially: that the action within a scene will always advance along the straight line and that the camera will remain consistently on one side of the action. If we were to move the camera within the 180 rule, then you are disturbing how your audience is experiencing things. And then again, we have rack focus, which it goes from one object or subject to the next. Now, let's talk about lighting, because lighting is primarily the responsibility of the director, but it is also very important for the cinematography to be mindful of this. So you want to make sure that you are filming scenes that make sense, that have good lighting, and that they can be easily understood. So let's talk about a little bit about different types of lighting. So key light is the main light, which illuminates the subjects and can create shadows. You have backlight, which is the light that hits a person or object from behind and provides a scene, a sense of depth behind the subject. You have fill light, which is the light that fills in the shadows created by the key light to soften kind of the harsh edges. You have eye light, which is the light that is reflected off the eyes. You have soft light, which is the light from a large source that creates soft, ill-defined shadows. And then you have bounce light, which is the light that is reflecting off something. Now, you may not have everything that you need to create all of these, but you can play around with outside light, you can play around with camera lights, you can play around with phone flashlight, you can play around with the own lighting in your environment. There's a lot of things that you can do with lighting, and you want to make sure that the lighting that you are using is setting up the right kind of tone and feeling for your scene. In here, you can see all of those different lights. So you have your object in the middle with your camera. You can see kind of where key light would fit, where fill light, and where backlight will go. Now let's talk about different camera movements and shots that you can do. So when you're thinking about camera height, you can move your camera to different levels in order to record and give a feeling depending on what you want to. So you can have the camera above, you can have the camera at eye level, you can have the camera at waist level, or you can go to knee level. Now let's really get into talking about the different camera shots, motions, and angles that we can do. So when we're thinking about camera angles, we're thinking about the way that things are being shot. So you have a two shot, which is a shot that includes two subjects in one shot or the exact same frame. Now this is really good for to read or to understand what the distance or body language of the characters or screen may mean for the storyline. Like, are they really close? Are they separated? Are they almost touching? This is a really good way to tell your audience all of this without needing to having it written somewhere. Then you have a close-up, which shows the full head, sometimes the shoulder of the subject. It's really good for adding drama or suspense in a scene and emphasizing emotion, especially when you're thinking about their eyes or their mouth. You have Dutch shot, which is a camera shot, which the camera has been rotated relatively horizontal or vertical within their lines, and it's kind of tilting on its axis. It's really good when your characters might be kind of confused or trying to figure things out. Then you have a tracking shot, which is any shot that physically moves the camera through the scene for an extended amount of time. So they are physically tracking that object or subject to show where they're going or maybe following them. You have a pan shot, which is moving the camera left to right or right to left while on a tripod or other still device. You might be looking at different environments. You might be looking at where two of your subjects are. You may be establishing some feelings or some things that are to come. Now let's talk about some shots. So you have an extreme long shot, which shows a broad view of the surroundings of the character. It's really good for capturing scenery. You can have an establishing shot, which is a shot that lets the viewer know where the scene will be taking place. It can be as general as a shot of the city or as specific as the local coffee shop. It's really good for avoiding confusion or discomfort among the audience when determining the setting. You will typically see this in movies, maybe more than once. If you are changing your environment, you want to establish it before you continue your storyline. You can have an aerial view, which can also be called a bird's eye view, which is taken directly overhead the subject, usually from like an aircraft or a very high crane, but you're kind of looking at their action and adding suspense. You can have a warm's eye view, which is opposite a bird's eye view, and it's a shot taken from the ground level and the lens pointing upward. You can make your subjects appear larger or just like more dominant. You can have a point of view shot, which is where the camera appears to be first person through the individual perception of your subject. You can have a long shot, which shows full body of subjects along with some or all of their surroundings. This is really good for a character's entrance into a scene. You can have a medium long shot, which shows subject cut off just above or below the knees, far enough to show some surroundings, but close enough to show facial expressions. This is really good for filming conversation between two or more people. You can have a medium shot, which shows subjects from the waist up. It's most frequently used type of shot because it replicates a human experience of proximity. It's good for conversation for two people, especially when you're thinking about over the shoulder. You can have a medium close-up, which shows the subject from the middle of the chest to the top of their head, and it's really good for capturing reactions. You can have a cutaway shot, which is a shot away from the main scene, usually showing what the subject is looking at. This is really good for displaying more of the surroundings, details, or reference to something that is happening in their environment that is taking away their attention. You can have a cut-in shot, which is a close-up shot of a subject in the main scene, and it's really good for revealing more details of a subject or object. You can have a high angle, which is where the subject is shot from above. It's really good for making the subject appear smaller and more vulnerable. You can have a low angle, which is where they're shot from below, and it makes the subjects appear taller and more powerful. You can have a candid angle, which is where the subject is shot at a tilted angle. It is really good for making subjects appear distorted or revealing confusion. You can have handheld, which is where the camera is held by a person rather than being placed on a tripod or other still device. This might be good if you're doing a tracking shot or if you're trying to show kind of the raw emotions and they're being followed with it, just handheld as you would be kind of trembling and kind of just doing normal life things. Now, when it comes to camera, there's different movements that you can do. You can do tilt, which is moving the camera from up to down or down to up. You can dolly, which is physically moving the camera towards or away from a subject while the lens stays fixed. You can zoom, which you're magnifying a specific area while the lens and body of the camera does not move. You can have dolly zoom, which is where the zooming the lens while moving away from the subject or zooming the lens out while moving towards the subject to kind of give a warped effect. And now let's talk about the importance of location and sound when you are picking your filming locations. So all of these are things that the cinematographer needs to think about. So when you're thinking about location, you want to make sure that you're picking a location that makes sense for your film, that is going to advance your film, and that is not going to be too distracting. So let's say that you want to film outdoors. There's a lot of different things that you have to think about. What is my background noise? Does it overpower your voice? Do you need to have your screen silent? Does it need to be a very loud environment? What do you need for your scene, and is that background noise giving it to you? You got to think about the weather. Is it raining? Is it sunny? Is it winding? Does this affect your background noise? Do you need it to be a specific weather? You have to think about time of day. Is it morning? Is it afternoon? How is this going to affect your filming? Might it be too bright? Might there be too many shadows? Might it not make sense for your film? And really, filming outdoors to filming indoors are two completely different things. Also, filming indoors, you have to think about your background noise and you have to think about your lighting, right? So always have this in mind when you are picking a location for your film, whether it's really short or whether it's a long film, you want to make sure that you are picking locations that make sense and that are going to help you film, not hinder your film. Now, when you're filming inside, you have to think about, the fluorescent lights in your house make it seem unnatural? Do they add a slightly yellow tint to your lighting? Is that something that you want to do? How loud can you be? Are you limited to a space? Or can you use other areas? And if you're ever not sure if you can film in a location, just ask. And this goes for anywhere in your community. Now let's think about sound. So we need to have a good looking film, but we also need to have really good sound. So good sound means that your dialogue can be heard loud and clear. And you can use microphones, you can use microphone stands, H2 recorders, a boom microphone. But the number one rule is that you cannot see that mic at all costs. So you need to be able to hide your mic throughout your entire film in order for your film to make sense. So whatever type of sound recording that you want to do, you want to make sure that your audience cannot see it. So that is all the information that I had for you in this cinematography lesson. I hope that you learned some new things about how to work with the cameras and move them, and different types of shots and movements that you can do, and that you really keep all of these things in mind as you move forward and you're trying to create these amazing films, that you have to keep in mind your lighting, your sound, and the looks of it. That is it for this lesson, and I'll see you in the next one.